Hello and welcome to this video. This one's going to be an overview of energy medicine. I'll be doing a separate video that goes into details on the specific types of energy medicine I do in my practice. But for now, I just want to kind of give you some of the general concepts. The term energy medicine is kind of a general purpose one. It refers to assessment and treatment of the subtle energy fields that run through and around the body. Probably the most familiar of these treatments in the United States are acupressure and acupuncture, perhaps homeopathy, although a lot of people think of that as a type of supplementation. It's actually interacting with the body's energy field, so it is a type of energy medicine. But there are others that are gradually gaining in popularity. Among those are Reiki, medical Qigong, laser and other types of light therapy, and Jinshin-jitsu, just to name a few. Now, the energy medicine techniques I use in my office are typically going to involve treatment using acupressure and or laser acupuncture. Laser acupuncture doesn't require needles and it's completely painless. And that's typically paired with a form of assessment known as applied kinesiology, or more commonly called muscle testing. Now, muscle testing is somewhat controversial, especially among medical doctors and other skeptics. But it is something that does work very well, and for my patients, seeing is believing, or maybe feeling is believing is a more accurate way of putting it. And once you've experienced it, it can be quite remarkable just how accurate it can be. Now, frankly, this energy medicine stuff is a bit weird. In fact, I thought about doing a demonstration, but I'm not going to demonstrate it on video because, well, it just looks hokey. It's really something you kind of have to experience, because seeing it or hearing a verbal description of the procedure, it just sounds too weird. It doesn't sound like it's legitimate. So it's one of those things that, like I said, experiencing it is really required to get an idea of what's going on with it. That said, I want to give you a kind of a basic overview of what energy medicine is all about. Let's start with the body's energy field itself. You're probably familiar, at least to some degree, with nerves, which carry electrical impulses to muscles and organs and that sort of thing. And that's kind of the wired version of electrical transmission in the body. But there are other forms of electrical and energy transmission that don't use wires. For example, acupuncture meridians transfer signals from one point to another in the body. And these acupuncture points are kind of like the cell phone towers of the body. So it's kind of akin to using cellular communication versus using a wired telephone line, for those of you who still remember what a wired telephone line is. And in addition to the acupuncture meridians, the body, like any machine that runs on electricity, puts off an electrical field that surrounds it. It's just that the electrical field the body produces is very subtle compared to something like a big electric generator or something like that. And that brings me to one of the big criticisms of energy medicine that you hear from skeptics, and that is, there's no research on energy medicine, which isn't 100% true. There's research on certain aspects of it, but energy medicine in general is very difficult to do research on, because when you do research in a laboratory setting or something of that nature, even not even necessarily a formal laboratory setting, in any kind of indoor space, you've got electric lights, you've got electric outlets, you've got computers, you've got all sorts of things that are running on electricity, and they're putting off electrical field. If you're trying to study this tiny, 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 tiny electrical field, and you've got all of this, by comparison, huge amounts of electrical field all around it, it makes it really tough to study it. Now imagine, for example, that you're shining a flashlight on the wall of a darkened room. And you can tell what's going on with that flashlight beam. You can see how it moves if you move the flashlight. You can kind of tell, how much area it's going to cover on the wall, that kind of thing. Well, imagine shining that same flashlight on a wall inside a room, with that wall being lit up by thousands of watts of industrial strength spotlights. You're not going to be able to tell much about that flashlight beam anymore. And that's kind of what happens when you try to study the body's electrical field in any kind of setting where there's electricity present. It just doesn't work very well. Nonetheless, research is kind of the holy grail now in healthcare. Everything's got to be evidence-based medicine. And energy medicine is really not that much evidence-based. But we can kind of look at things that we know from other aspects that have been scientifically researched. For example, the effect of electrical fields on the body. And we know that there's been reports of all sorts of symptoms that can occur when people are exposed for extended periods of time or in short periods of time with intense electrical fields. And that's something that we have pretty much accepted both within conventional medicine and alternative medicine. So if the body is susceptible to electrical fields, why would that be? It's not enough to actually cause thermal damage or anything like that. So what exactly is causing the issue with high strength electrical fields in the body? Well, it's interacting with the body's electrical field and causing interference. That's what's going on. So if these high strength electrical fields can cause problems with the body and adversely affect health, is it really such a big leap to think that correcting the body's electrical fields might promote health? I'm going to leave that for you to decide for yourself. Now, although there are many techniques for evaluating the flow of electricity and energy in the body, the one I primarily use is applied kinesiology, as I mentioned earlier, or muscle testing. People also call it AK for short. Applied kinesiology is actually one of the areas where there is some research that gives some credence to how it works. They've actually done experiments where they hook people up to electromyography machines, which measure the electrical signals traveling through the nerves to the muscles. And what they found is that when you do muscle testing, what I do is if I have somebody holding their arm out, I press down on their arm and their arm goes weak, that's giving me information, what the things that make the arm weak. Well, they have done, like I said, tests using EMG, electromyography, to measure the nerve signals going to the muscle, and have found that when there is that weakness that you see in muscle testing, there is an objective, measurable, and recordable decrease in the nerve supply and the nerve signals going to the muscle. That's what's producing the weakness. Now, all the same, a lot of skeptics will still say, well, okay, maybe it works as a placebo, which is a technical word for, you believe it works, so therefore it seems like it works to you because you basically tricked yourself into thinking it worked. And okay, if all of this is just a placebo, is there anything wrong with helping somebody with a placebo? If somebody's getting good, lasting results, does it really matter if it's real or not? Again, I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. But in any event, we can use applied kinesiology or muscle testing to evaluate the way things are interacting with the body's energy field and use that information to, in a lot of cases, correct the problem. Now, in case you're wondering, well, what if there's just this big strength difference between the person testing and the person being tested? Well, I'll give you an example from my own practice. I had a gentleman who was a professional heavyweight bodybuilder. He was a big, strong guy. Now, I'm not a weakling by any stretch of the imagination, at least I don't think so. But I literally could have lifted myself up, my entire body weight up on this guy's arm. I could have done pull-ups on this guy's arm. That's how strong he was. And yet, when I checked him with muscle testing and we found a weak response, push on his arm goes down. Now, the first time I did this with him and we got the weak response, he was like, oh, I wasn't ready. Okay, so bring his arm up again, goes right back down again. I still wasn't ready. Okay, so we did it a third time. Arm goes down. So, okay, I want to do this one more time, but give me a second. He goes, okay, do it now! his arm still goes down. And yeah, I was kind of getting a little concerned what he was going to do to me if his arm went down again. But on that last one, he just started laughing. He's like, "Oh, okay, doc, I guess it's working. I don't know how that worked, but that was weird." And so I was relieved that he took it well, and he was relieved after I explained to him that it wasn't that this skinny guy who he outweighed by 100 pounds was stronger than him. It was the fact that there was a disturbance in his electrical field that was changing the nerve signals to his muscles, and that's what was making him weak. It was the nerves, not the muscles. He's like, okay. He liked that a lot better than, suddenly all of his years of training suddenly were for naught because a guy who weighed 100 pounds less than him was stronger. So anyway, strength differential really doesn't matter. And there are situations where somebody can't do an arm muscle test. This works on all the muscles. This is something that is affecting the entire body. As a chiropractor, I'm interested in the muscle system because it helps support the spine and that sort of thing. But it actually is affecting the entire electrical system of the body and everything that controls, which is pretty much everything. So although people are coming to me for these types of techniques a lot of times with non-musculoskeletal complaints, so it might be allergies or digestive problems or gout, we're able to, a lot of times, to affect the symptoms of those conditions because we're correcting that energy flow in the body, and we're seeing that through the muscle testing. So I'm a musculoskeletal specialist. Again, my focus is on the muscular, but we do see effects, and I call them happy side effects. So if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I hear you treat allergies," I think, well, not exactly. I do something that usually helps get rid of allergy symptoms, which is a little different than the allopathic medicine approach to treating allergies, which is primarily to put some kind of chemical agent into the body, an antihistamine or something like that, or a steroid that suppresses inflammation, is a means of controlling the symptoms. So I'm actually, basically, fixing the blown fuses, so to speak. And by correcting the electrical system, we see an improvement in a wide variety of symptoms, whatever they may be. Not to say that this fixes everything or cures everything, but we are able to get results in a lot of conditions that a lot of times didn't respond to anything else. So I think that covers pretty much the general principles of energy medicine, at least as I use them, and I'll do a separate video that goes into the specific techniques I use and what they can be used for. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.